She was trying to save her 5-year-old son's life, but an HOA officer pulled a gun on the nurse holding his insulin. Doug Parks wasn't a cop, but he acted like one, blocking a medical emergency with loaded arrogance. Just when it seemed like all hope was lost, a desperate mother made a move that changed everything and turned the spotlight onto those truly responsible. But just wait until you hear how this real-life standoff ended, and why justice, in the end, didn't miss its mark. Every Thursday, at exactly 3:15 p.m., Susan Harper turned the corner into Willow Creek Drive, a quiet, leafy cul-de-sac nestled in the heart of a gated suburban community. The streets were lined with identical homes painted in earth tones, and driveways with identical signs that read, "No soliciting, HOA enforced." The kind of neighborhood that sold itself on safety and sameness. Susan drove a gray Prius, modest but clean, reliable, much like herself. She wasn't flashy, but she was steady, efficient. Known by her patients for her calm presence and gentle touch, she had a way of making medical emergencies feel less urgent. And every Thursday, her job was the same: help a little boy named Cody Madison stay alive. Cody was 5 years old, with sandy blonde hair, a sharp mind, and a body that didn't always cooperate. He'd been diagnosed with type 1 diabetes just under a year ago, a diagnosis that shattered his mother's sense of normalcy. Since then, every day was a balancing act between insulin, food, blood sugar spikes, and crashes. Cody's mother, Nika, worked double shifts at a local walk-in clinic. She was the kind of mom who rarely asked for help, but Susan had quickly become the exception. Their arrangement was simple. Once a week, while Nika was on a critical Zoom consultation, Susan would drop by to administer a scheduled dose of insulin and make sure Cody was stable. It was preventative care, routine. But diabetes doesn't always care about routines. That afternoon was warmer than usual. The sky was clear, but the air held the weight of late summer, the kind of heat that settles quietly and stays. Susan parked as usual, let herself in through the side gate, and gave a small knock on the glass patio door before entering. Cody was inside, curled up on the couch, his favorite plush dinosaur clutched tightly to his chest. She smiled. "Hey there, buddy." But Cody didn't answer. He just blinked slowly. His cheeks were flushed, and sweat glistened across his forehead. He looked smaller somehow, his body curled inward, as if trying to protect itself from something unseen. Susan's smile faded. She walked quickly to him, crouched down, and gently took his hand. It was clammy. She asked him how he was feeling, but his answer came in half-formed words. His blood sugar was dropping, fast. Years of experience told her everything she needed to know before even unzipping her bag. No panic, no wasted movement. She reached for her medical case, her fingers moving with calm precision. Alcohol swab, insulin pen, syringe. The numbers were already in her head. Cody needed the shot now. She was ready. She always was. Just another Thursday. Just another routine. Until the sound of tires screeching outside broke everything. Susan had just uncapped the syringe. Her hands moved with the ease of habit. Fluid, practiced, calm. The kind of calm that came from experience, not detachment. Cody lay a few feet away on the couch, pale and glassy-eyed, barely able to lift his head. His breathing had gone shallow. Sweat dotted his brow. The numbers on the glucose monitor didn't lie. He was crashing, fast. And then, screech. The sound of tires tearing across pavement shattered the quiet like a dropped plate. Susan's body stiffened. She looked toward the window, blinking once, trying to register what she was hearing. A black SUV came to a jerking stop in the middle of the cul-de-sac. Doors slammed open, and two men in dark, tactical-style vests came barreling out. Their uniforms weren't police-issued, but they were official enough to intimidate. Emblazoned across the front of each vest, HOA security enforcement. They looked like cops. They moved like cops. But they weren't. Doug Parks led the charge, bald head shining with sweat, a walkie-talkie clipped to his chest, and a fury in his stride that didn't match the setting. Behind him trailed a younger man, broad-shouldered but visibly unsure, already fumbling with the clasp of his utility belt. The moment Doug reached the patio door, he didn't knock. He didn't hesitate. He shouted, "Nasteju." "Put it down. Hands where I can see them. Now." Susan turned, startled. The syringe was still in her hand. For a second, she didn't move, too shocked to process what was happening. "I'm a nurse," she said, her voice steady despite the adrenaline now spiking in her chest. "This is Insulin. The child inside is crashing. He needs this. I need to—" But Doug had already drawn his gun, a black pistol, held high, aimed directly at her chest. Her body went ice cold. "Sure, Sage." "You think I'm stupid?" he barked. "I know a junkie when I see one. That's a needle. You're not sticking anyone with that, not while I'm here." Susan froze in place, both hands now raised, syringe still pinched between two fingers. "It's not drugs, it's insulin," she said again, louder this time. Her training screamed at her to stay calm, to de-escalate, but every instinct inside her screamed louder. "Cody is dying." She glanced back toward the living room, heart pounding. Cody hadn't made a sound. He was still slumped on the couch. "Please," she pleaded, the edge of desperation cracking her voice. "Look inside. Look at the boy. He's 5. He needs the shot. If I don't give it to him—" "Drop it," Doug shouted, taking another step forward. The gun didn't waver. The second man hesitated. His eyes darted toward the house, where Cody was visible through the sliding glass door. For a moment, something flickered in his expression. Uncertainty, maybe even fear. But he didn't act. He didn't stop Doug. Susan could feel the sweat building on the back of her neck, her knees locked in place, her lungs refusing to breathe fully. The syringe was still uncapped in her hand. Her patient was dying, and a stranger with a gun was standing between her and doing her job. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. This was a catastrophe in motion. And it wasn't over yet. Nika Madison heard the shouting before she even registered the words. She was in the kitchen, her laptop open on a virtual consultation with a pediatric endocrinologist. It was supposed to be a routine follow-up. She heard a man's voice, loud, angry, and something in her gut snapped. She ran. Barefoot, she rounded the corner, heart hammering, and flung open the sliding glass door to the backyard, and froze. Susan was standing motionless, hands raised, a syringe still between her fingers. In front of her stood a man with a gun. A gun. Another man, younger, visibly shaken, stood just behind him, glancing nervously between the woman and the window. But Nika didn't look at them for long. Her eyes locked on the living room floor, and that's when she screamed. Cody. He was lying on the floor now, not the couch. His tiny limbs jerked in involuntary spasms. His lips had lost all color. His face, her baby's face, was going blue. "Let her help him," Nika shrieked, her voice breaking as she ran forward. She didn't care about the gun. She didn't care about who they were or what they thought. All she saw was her son dying, and the only person who could help being held at gunpoint. Doug Parks didn't move. His stance remained solid, the gun unwavering, aimed at Susan like she was a threat. Like she wasn't the one standing between life and death for a 5-year-old child. "You bring drug dealers into this community," he muttered coldly, almost to himself. "This is what happens." The words barely registered. They were nonsense, madness. Nika's hands flew up. She screamed again, begged, anything to break through the wall of delusion in front of her. Susan, her eyes brimming with tears, took a tiny step forward, syringe trembling in her hand. "Please," Susan whispered, "he'll die. I swear to you, he will die if I don't give him this now." Her voice cracked mid-sentence, desperation leaking out with every word. And still, Doug didn't move. His finger hovered near the trigger, his jaw clenched tight with righteous authority, as if he was guarding something more important than a child's life. The second guard shifted his weight. His hand twitched toward his belt, but he didn't speak, didn't stop it, didn't help. In that moment, the world had gone insane. Inside the house, Cody gave a small, strangled sound, something between a gasp and a moan, and then fell still. Time collapsed. Nika dropped to her knees, fists pounding the patio floor, a scream caught in her throat. Susan's eyes locked with hers. They knew. There was no more time. Something cracked inside Nika, loud, primal, and irreversible. There was no more pleading, no more logic, no more room for fear. Her son had stopped moving. She screamed as she lunged forward, her bare feet scraping the stone patio. Her body collided with Doug's in full force, her elbow catching his arm, her shoulder ramming his ribs. He stumbled back just enough. The gun dipped. His stance broke. That single second was all Susan needed. Like a match to dry tinder, she ignited into motion. Her knees hit the hardwood with a dull smack, and in one clean, precise move, she plunged the syringe into Cody's upper thigh, pressing the plunger until it clicked empty. It wasn't elegant. It wasn't gentle. It was survival. And then, nothing happened. Cody didn't jolt awake like in the movies. His body seized once, violently, a terrible, bone-deep convulsion that twisted his limbs and contorted his face into something unrecognizable. His eyes rolled back, white and glassy. A soft, gurgled sound escaped his lips. And then, stillness. His tiny chest stopped rising, his fingers uncurled. His head rolled to the side like a rag doll. And for a moment that stretched forever, he looked gone. The room fell into horrifying silence. Doug still held his gun, though it had dropped slightly, trembling now. The younger guard stood frozen in place, his mouth open but useless. He couldn't look away from Cody. Neither could Nika. Neither could Susan. Susan's hands hovered above the boy's body, useless now. Her breath caught in her throat. Her lips moved, whispering something only she could hear. Nika dropped beside her son, one hand on his chest, one cupping the side of his pale face. Baby? Come on, baby. Cody, please come back, please. Nothing. Just the mechanical click of Susan's blood sugar monitor blinking red on the floor. Just the distant, rising wail of sirens. It had been 5 minutes since his crash began. 5 minutes since someone decided a nurse with a syringe was a threat. 5 minutes since a gun mattered more than a child. The paramedics arrived like thunder. No hesitation, no questions, no guns. Just purpose. They flew through the door, 2 men and a woman, eyes scanning the scene in milliseconds. The older of the three dropped to his knees beside Cody before anyone spoke a word. His hands were already pulling open bags, snapping on gloves. 5-year-old male, Susan choked out. Type 1 diabetic. Severe hypoglycemia. He was crashing. I got the insulin in a minute ago. They didn't nod. They didn't pause. One of them placed 2 fingers on Cody's neck. Pulse weak. Airways compromised. Bag him. In seconds, they were over him. Lifting, tilting, stabilizing. Oxygen mask. Heart monitor, glucometer. IV access. Orders were barked, equipment tossed and caught midair. They worked as if every cell in their body knew this moment meant life or death. Susan backed away slowly, her body shaking uncontrollably. She fell against the wall and slid to the floor, hands trembling, eyes locked on Cody. Nika was still kneeling beside him, whispering words no one else could hear. Then, a twitch, a flicker. Cody's lips parted, and with a rough, shallow inhale, he breathed. It was faint, barely there, but it was real. The medic gave a sharp nod. We've got him. Nika sobbed, not loudly, but in that deep, broken way that only comes when someone you love steps away from the edge and somehow turns back. The boy was alive, but something in that room had died. Trust, safety, whatever illusion of control they thought they had. And outside, the 2 men in HOA vests stood motionless, not as protectors, but as statues to a broken system. The hospital room was quiet, too quiet. The lights were dimmed, the only sound coming from the slow, steady beeping of a heart monitor. Cody lay motionless in the bed, a thin tube taped beneath his nose, a soft pulse oximeter wrapped around his tiny finger. His chest rose and fell in shallow mechanical rhythm, stable but distant. It had been nearly 6 hours since the paramedics brought him in. Nika sat in the far corner of the room, curled into a plastic hospital chair that hadn't been made for real human comfort. Her arms were wrapped around her knees. She hadn't cried yet. She wasn't sure she could. Doctors had come and gone, nurses too, all moving with practiced empathy, explaining things gently, clinically. The words blurred together. Severe hypoglycemia. Close call. A few more minutes, and the brain could have suffered irreversible damage. That sentence stuck with her. It looped over and over in her head. Another 2 minutes. That's how close she had come to losing her son, to watching him slip away on the floor of their living room while two armed strangers stood in the way. She glanced at Cody again. His face was pale, but peaceful. A machine beeped beside him with stubborn regularity, as if to say, he's still here. Her hands trembled as she reached for her phone. She hadn't touched it since they arrived. Over 20 missed calls. Dozens of unread messages from friends, coworkers, even neighbors. People who saw the ambulance, who didn't know what happened. She opened a blank post, and then she began to type. She didn't filter it. She didn't overthink the tone. She just wrote. Every detail, every scream, every second of silence as Doug Parks held a gun to a nurse's chest while her child fought for his life. She wrote about Susan, about the hesitation in the second guard's face, about the HOA name stitched across their vests as they stood between a dying boy and the woman trying to save him. She wrote what happened to Cody. She wrote what almost didn't, and then, staring at her shaking hands, she tapped post. For a moment, nothing happened. Just the soft hum of medical machines and the low murmur of footsteps in the hallway outside. But within minutes, her phone began to light up. A comment. Then 5. Then 100. Shares, messages, reactions pouring in from names she didn't recognize. Some from the neighborhood, others from strangers in other states. Within the hour, the post had gone viral. Within 3, it was being shared in diabetes advocacy groups. By nightfall, it had made the front page of a parenting forum with over 1 million followers. And by morning, someone from a national news outlet had sent her a DM. We'd like to talk to you about what happened. America needs to hear this. The world had cracked open, and Nika, exhausted, heartbroken, but burning with quiet fury, wasn't going to let it close again. By the next morning, the numbers were impossible to ignore. Nika's post, written in a haze of hospital exhaustion and rage, had exploded across social media. What started as a raw outpouring of grief and disbelief had turned into a lightning rod. Within 24 hours, it had been shared over 300,000 times. People were tagging local news outlets, national ones, advocacy pages, legal forums. Parents of diabetic children from across the country flooded her inbox with messages. That could have been my son. I'm so sorry. What can we do? Others weren't parents. They were angry citizens, nurses, lawyers, veterans. Ordinary people who recognized that a line had been crossed, deeply, dangerously crossed, and it wasn't going to disappear quietly. Then came the reporters, local first, then national. They called the hospital, then her phone, then Susan's. One online article called it the syringe standoff. Another used the headline, Armed HOA stops life-saving injection. 5-year-old nearly dies. The pressure grew. 2 days later, a private message landed in her inbox from a name she didn't recognize. A man who said he used to sit on the HOA board before moving out. Attached to the message was a PDF of internal HOA guidelines, including one line highlighted in red. HOA security enforcers are not authorized to carry firearms under any circumstance. It was clear, crystal clear, and now it was evidence. Nika read that sentence 10 times, her hands trembling with something new, clarity. For the first time since the nightmare began, she wasn't just surviving it, she was getting ahead of it. That same evening, she received a call from a civil rights attorney out of Atlanta, Marcus Lee. He had read the story. And he wasn't just angry, he was ready. This is more than negligence, he told her over the phone. This is obstruction. This is reckless endangerment. This is attempted manslaughter with a badge and no law to back it up. His voice was calm, sharp, the kind of voice that made people in power sit up straighter. You don't owe me $1, he added. You just have to say yes. She did, without hesitation. The lawsuit moved quickly. The court date was set within a month, teacher, expedited under emergency filing due to the severity of the incident. The story hadn't faded from the public eye. If anything, it had grown louder. And somewhere in the middle of it all, Nika realized something. She was no longer just Cody's mom. She was a woman with a story no one could ignore, a woman who had stared down a gun and watched silence nearly take her child, a woman who now had the world watching, and the truth at her back. She wasn't just a mother anymore. She was a voice, a fury, a reckoning in motion. The courthouse steps were swarmed with cameras. Reporters flanked the main entrance, microphones stretched toward the doors, photographers clicking rapid fire as Nika Madison stepped out of the transport van. She didn't look at them. She didn't wave. She didn't speak. She simply walked, slowly, steadily, intentionally, up the steps with Susan Harper at her side and Cody cradled in her arms. He was awake now, a little sleepy, still recovering, but alert enough to cling to her neck and bury his face in her shoulder when the shutters flashed. Inside the courtroom, every seat was filled. Strangers, supporters, journalists, and quiet observers sat shoulder to shoulder in tense silence. There was no whispering, no side conversations, just that electric hum of everyone waiting for something that mattered. At the defense table, Doug Parks sat stiffly in a navy blazer, a far cry from the HOA vest he wore that day. His expression was flat, not remorseful, not angry, just blank. The second guard hadn't been charged, but was called as a witness. He sat a few rows back, eyes downcast, hands folded tightly in his lap. Nika took her seat near the front, between Marcus Lee and Susan. Her hands didn't tremble, not anymore. When the trial began, it moved swiftly. The facts were damning. The body cam style phone video taken from Susan's pocket, accidentally recording during the altercation, was played on the large courtroom monitor. The footage wasn't perfect, but it didn't need to be. It showed Cody's small body twitching on the ground. It captured Susan's voice cracking through fear. "I'm a nurse. This is Insulin. He's a child." And it caught, clearly, Doug Parks' voice shouting back, "Drop it! Don't move!" With a gun trained squarely on her. The courtroom was silent as the footage played. Not a cough, not a stir, just the sounds from the video echoing across the walls. The chaos, the fear, the injustice frozen in pixels. When it ended, the air felt thicker. The jury didn't hide their reactions. A woman in the front row wiped her eyes, and one man clenched his jaw so tightly his neck twitched. Then Marcus stood. There was no theatrics in his approach, no pacing, just presence. He stepped forward, hands clasped in front of him, and looked directly at the jurors. His voice was calm, clear, measured. America is a place where children are supposed to be safe in their homes, where a mother shouldn't have to choose between begging and breaking through a man with a gun, where someone with a syringe trying to save a life is not treated like a criminal. He turned slightly, gesturing toward Nika and Cody. This child's life, his entire future, was put at risk because someone thought they were a cop. He paused. Let it sink in. But he wasn't. Another pause. And Cody almost paid for that fantasy with his life. He stepped back. Silence. Not just in the room. In the air itself. A stillness that only truth can create. The judge said nothing for a moment. Neither did the defense. Doug remained motionless, as if even now he couldn't grasp the gravity of what had happened. But everyone else in that room did. They felt it. In their bones. And for the first time since that awful Thursday afternoon, justice didn't feel like a question. It felt like a clock finally ticking in the right direction. The verdict came faster than anyone expected. Just 3 hours of deliberation, and the jury returned. Some looked tired, others looked furious, but not one of them looked uncertain. The courtroom was tense as they filed in. Nika sat upright in her seat, Cody asleep on her lap, his small hand curled around her thumb. Susan sat beside her, clutching her bag so tightly her knuckles had gone white. Doug Parks didn't look at anyone. The judge read the decision aloud in a steady voice, but every word landed like a hammer. Libel, negligence, endangerment. $2.5 million in damages, to be paid by the Homeowners Association for gross failure in the delegation, training, and oversight of unauthorized armed personnel. Doug Parks was barred from ever working in private security again. His concealed carry permit was revoked permanently. The footage, the audio, the threats, the gun left no room for interpretation. Outside the courtroom, reporters clustered like birds on a wire. But something else began happening that no one could stop. Change. Local lawmakers, already under scrutiny from voters, moved quickly. Within days, a new ordinance was passed unanimously in the county. No privately contracted HOA enforcement may carry firearms. No unlicensed personnel may intervene in medical emergencies. Failure to comply will result in criminal charges. And then it began spreading. Other HOAs in nearby counties followed suit, then other states. It was no longer just about Willow Creek or Doug Parks. It had become a national story, a case study, a legal precedent, a warning. But for Nika, that wasn't the part that stayed with her. When a reporter asked her how she felt about the money, the ruling, the headlines, she paused for a long moment before answering. "This was never about the payout," she said quietly. "It was about making sure that no one, no armed man with a badge he printed at home, could ever stand in front of my child and decide whether he lived or died." She looked down at Cody, who was awake now, watching the microphone with quiet curiosity. "It's about this," she added, "about him feeling safe in his own house again. No amount of money could give that back, but truth could, accountability could, and now it had." In the months that followed the trial, Nika Madison didn't return to life as it was before. She couldn't. Too much had changed. Too much had been revealed, not just about her neighborhood or her country, but about the fragile line between ignorance and danger. But out of that pain, something new began to grow, something rooted not in revenge, but in responsibility. She and Susan Harper, the nurse who had saved Cody's life with steady hands and unshakable resolve, sat together at her kitchen table one morning, drinking lukewarm coffee and staring at a blank legal pad. They weren't lawyers. They weren't activists. They were just two women who had been in the wrong place at the right time, or maybe the right place at the wrong time, and decided that silence was no longer an option. By that afternoon, they had a name: Needle of Life, a nonprofit dedicated to one simple mission: educating private security and homeowners associations about chronic medical conditions, especially in children. They built training modules, they collaborated with doctors, they partnered with legal advocates and first responder unions. Within a year, they were speaking at elementary schools, city halls, and police academies. Cody's story, once a viral headline, became a case study taught at national safety seminars, not as a tragedy, but as a lesson. One school district in Texas adopted the Needle of Life protocol for recognizing medical tools. A homeowners association in Arizona rewrote its bylaws after watching a recording of Nika's courtroom testimony. Lives were being protected by what she and Susan had built. During an interview on a local morning show, a host asked Nika if she saw herself as a hero now. She shook her head, calm but firm. "I'm not a hero," she said. "I'm a mom. A mom who wasn't going to bury her child because someone saw insulin and thought it was heroin." There was no need for applause. The truth spoke loudly enough. Cody, now 6, had gone back to his cartoons and Legos. He still needed his shots. Still had days that were hard, but now, every time Susan visited, he greeted her with a mischievous smile. "You here to save me again?" he'd ask, with a giggle. And Susan, just as she had that terrible day, always smiled back with a quiet, unwavering yes. Every time, buddy, every time. Because some heroes don't wear capes. They wear nursing scrubs or hospital bracelets, or the unshakable strength of a mother who decided one story wasn't going to end in silence. It was going to begin something new,